What's up, everybody? Mike here, and in this Diablo 4 build video, I'll be bringing you my solo Necromancer build I call the Grim Reaper, because when we think of Grim Reaper, he's always by himself anyway, right? So I decided to make a level 50 plus Grim Reaper build with no minions that is very strong, tanky, and melts enemies. So let's jump into it. So as I usually like to do, I'll kick things off with the core abilities you're going to use in the skill tree, and that is Reaper. Still using Reaper as our basic attack. Got that leveled up to rank 5, just because your base attack is going to do great damage and help you recover your general essence. Not general essence, but generate your essence for you. One of the things that's going to help you out a lot. And then going to use the Enhanced Reap as far as the upgrade there. And then go into Accolades Reap. Keep that too, because you want to form corpses here. Because you don't have minions to help you out form corpses, so you still want to have your basic skill to help you form corpses in this build, to take on enemies as well as bosses. And then of course we still have Sever in here, another key ability to this build, because Reap and Sever go together with the whole Reaper theme for this build. Much like Reap, I have Sever at rank 5 topped out, and then going to the enhance here, enhance Sever to do more damage along initial path. And then Paranormal Sever is still kept in there. Very fourth cast of Sever makes enemies vulnerable, because they're still gonna get more damage off of that. And to me, it's better than the Supernatural Sever. Now, a switch up I did here next is, instead of keeping Decrepify, I actually swapped that out for Iron Maiden. Only put 1 point into it, though. Iron Maiden, curse target area enemies afflicted by Iron Maiden take 12 to 250 on damage. This is the first rank. Damage each time they deal direct damage. Last 10 seconds. So, just one rank into that. Not really need to buff it more than that, unless you got armor that can put some extra points into it. That'd be helpful. But yeah, I left it alone there, and it's actually really good. Helps out, kind of helps with, with the tankiness of this and putting out more damage while you're being attacked. But I would say the probably third most skill used a lot in this build is going to be Corpse Tendrils. Kept this in here, and I got it rank 5, but with the equipment I'm using for item contribution, it got 2 points in more to it, so it's at 7 right now for me. This is going to help a lot with just stunning and doing damage to your enemies. And I want to go into the upgrades of Enhanced Corpse Tendrils and then Blighted Corpse Tendrils. This time, instead of using Blade Corpse Tendrils, I decided to go into the Blighted Corpse Tendrils for this, because that has 30% chance to drop a blood orb when damaging enemies. So that's going to help with the survivability of this build. And finally, I added, well, I shouldn't say finally, this is actually the 5th ability I added in here, Corpse Explosion. I finally got Corpse Explosion into a build. I got it actually topped out at rank 5. If you have any armor that could possibly get a bit beyond that, that would be very helpful. But yeah, Corpse Explosion, it was crazy good in the beta. And even though they nerfed it a bit, it's still freaking good with this build. It will help you melt enemies. The way I decided to go with the upgrades here is Enhanced Corpse Explosion, which basically the radius is increased by 50%, so you're going to be doing more damage because of the radius. And then I went into Blighted Corpse Explosion, basically where it makes Corpse Explosion become a darkness skill. Instead of exploding, release a Vile Miasma, dealing X amount of damage over 6 seconds. And that helps a lot. You just keep popping this off, and you're just going to keep taking it and doing great damage. You're going to melt your enemies with that dot damage of Corpse Explosion, while using your base attack and Sever in there too, and Corpse Tendrils in combination with it. It's just going to be devastating. And even though this build, may not have a lot of attack power, it's more has armor than attack power, that's not going to matter. You're going to just decimate. You're going to obliterate these enemies, like, no problem. And then moving on to the ultimate ability, I got Bone Storm in here, which is just incredible. Bone Storm is your ultimate that essentially creates a swirling storm of bones around you, and if you have a golem, it'll do whatever on your golem, but this is no minion build, and it deals immense damage to surrounding enemies over 10 seconds. And then I got the upgrades for it as well too. Prime Bone Storm, which your damage reduction is increased by 50% while Bone Storm is active, so that just adds extra protection while you're doing damage. And then Supreme Bone Storm, your critical strike chance is increased by 20% while Bone Storm is active. So you're just doing more crit, you got more protection, and you're just doing damage even more so with this as part of the core skills. And then the key passive, of course, here is going to be Shadow Blight to combine with what you're doing with the Blight damage. Shadow Blight, Shadow damage inflicts enemies with Shadow Blight for 2 seconds, and you and your minions deal 10% bonus damage to enemies with Shadow Blight. So you're going to be doing even more damage with this. Every time an enemy receives shadow damage from you or your minions while they are affected by shadow blight, they take an additional X amount of damage. So yeah, it's very freaking good with this build. It's gonna help you just melt enemies quick at the stage of the game on tier 3. Not a problem at all. Now going into the passes of this build that help enhance the core abilities here, I want to first go into Hued Flesh, where I put 1 point into that. And it has a lucky hit. Your damage has up to 4% chance to create a corpse at target's location. It's going to help you create more corpses because, you know, you're trying to create still as many corpses as you can without your minions. Your basic skill, now Hued Flesh is helping out with that, along with other skills here. And this set, just rank 1, you know, is good. If you want to get up further, I think it does maybe 12%. And when it's topped out to rank 3, but you gotta have to sacrifice a different passive in terms of like fully ranking the other passive for this. Up to you. You can do that. I just had 1 though, and it still does just fine for me. And then I want to invest in Grim Harvest. I want to keep that part of the build. Consume the corpse to generate 6 essence because we need essence regeneration in this build. It's very important we have this, not just with the basic skill, but also with the passives here, Grim Harvest. Max that out to basically help with that essence regeneration because, oh man, does it freaking help out a lot. It's immense. Like, I pretty much almost never run out, I feel like, because I'm partially not even paying attention because I always usually have some. And then also combined with that, Fueled by Death, max that out, deal 9%, times increase damage for 6 seconds after consuming a corpse. So you're going to be consuming corpses a lot, whether you're using Corpse Explosion or Corpse Tendril. Then I also wanted to keep in here Death's Embrace, where you're close to enemies, you take 6% more damage from you, and you deal, they basically deal less damage to you. So basically it's to help with being more tanky and dish out more damage as well too. And this is very good to have for this build, just to stay alive and survivability. I decided to keep the darkness skills here with, you know, Reaper's Pursuit. I kept that maxed out, as along with Gloom, got that maxed out, and then Terror as well, got that maxed out. I didn't max out a crippling darkness. I just put 1 point in this. This is one where you don't necessarily have to put 2 points in. You can actually take 1 point out and put it into Hued Flesh if you want, because the stun is not super important for this build, but at least 1 point into it's fine. If you don't want to use it at all and just put both points into Hued Flesh, go for it. You know, I think that's the one you can really sacrifice that's not going to really hinder you with this build. And then the last 2 here, I believe I went into is Standalone. I still want to put 1 point in Standalone, even though you don't have any minions, because it helps with damage reduction. Even just put 1 point into it. And then what I added here is Memento Mori, where sacrifice both Skeletal Warriors and Skeletal Mages increase their sacrifice bonus by 60%. So you're just basically doing out more damage. And that's partially why, even though your attack power is, like, you know, not that great, you're still dishing out a ton of damage because of your abilities, crit damage, etc. Next here we have the equipment I want to go over as far as the aspects and gems you'll be using for the equipment to help make this build even stronger and help you deal with these bosses even better. So beginning with aspect of Shielding Storm here I have, and as always like to say, if you can find a legendary version of these aspects, please do, because legendary versions are going to be much better than the basic Codex of Power versions. With this particular aspect, each time that Bone Storm damages enemy, gain a barrier equal to a percentage of your base life for 10 seconds. Very good for adding more protection to this build, and so you have more survivability. Once again, also great against boss fights too. Then I have the aspect of Protector, which is obviously like just a universal thing I think every build needs in this game. If you don't know what it does, damage an elite enemy grants you a barrier absorbing up to a basic certain amount of damage for 10 seconds, and this effect only happens every 30 seconds. So sometimes it varies in terms, I think, amount of seconds maybe, but it's mostly the damage you can absorb, though it's the bigger factor of what varies on it. So it's very good when you're going against a lot of elites and you just have extra protection, keep you alive. It's just incredible just to, you know, melt enemies, beat up on these elites while having this barrier up, knowing they can't really do anything to you for a certain amount of time. Then I've added the Blighted aspect. This aspect, you deal basic certain amount of damage, increase damage for 6 seconds after Shadow Blight. Key passive damages enemies for 10 seconds. So this will vary depending on your legendary version of this. Like the current one I have, I think does 120%. So you're going to find this less than that, maybe more, around the same. And yeah, very good, and help you just deal out more damage to your enemies for a short period of time. It goes along with the key passive Shadow Blight as well too, which we got. So nice 1-2 combo there. Then I've added in here aspect of the Embalmer. So this aspect, you know, consuming a corpse has a percentage chance to spawn a blood orb. So once again, blood orbs coming into play with the build to help keep you alive, as well as just survivability and help you do more damage, you know, in the long run, essentially. Mainly survivability though, and you're going to be, you know, consuming a lot of corpses. You're going to be making a lot of corpses with this build, but even out your minions. So I felt this is a very good addition to this build. Then going from the Reaper Commander build, I kept in here the Wind Striker aspect here with the boots. I basically kept the same thing with that, where your critical strikes grant, you know, a certain percentage movement speed for 1 second up to 6 seconds. And basically helping be more mobile with this build, because Necros tend to be kind of sluggish or slow compared to other classes. So I wanted to add more movement to this, movement speed, more mobility. So that way you just always have that opportunity and chance to move around, stay alive better. This one here is an interesting one I decided to add here. Oseas Gale. I might be mispronouncing that. But what this does is Bone Storm consumes up to 8 corpses to increase its duration by up to a percentage of, not percentage, sorry, a certain amount of seconds. So for the one I have, it's 7.2 seconds. So with you having so many corpses on the field, essentially, you can consume up to 8, and your Bone Storm just lasts longer, allowing you to do more damage and have more survivability. Like, why not? You know, it just seems like the perfect thing to do with this type of build. Then, of course, another one that's kind of universal, I feel like, across all builds I'm going to be doing is the looting aspect, where becoming injured while crowd controlled grants you unstoppable for 4 seconds. And what's going to vary on, depending on what legendary aspect you have for this, is the cooldown. This one I have on here is 30-second cooldown. You might get one that's 40. You might get one that's a little less, like 20. The better you know you have on the cooldown, the more times this will tick when you need it to. But it should be something. This is gonna be something that probably rarely even happens to you, but it's definitely a good, you know, sort of like last save type of thing to have, you know, when you're in trouble, basically. Cadaverous aspect, which consuming a corpse increases damage of your next core skill by a percentage, up to a certain percentage. So it's necro only. For example, the one I have on this build is increases damage of your next skill core skill by 8%, up to 4%. But there's obviously going to be different kinds, different variations of this type of aspect. So get whichever one is the best for you for the time being. And, you know, you're going to unlocking better versions of these aspects anyways. You upgrade, level up, and to get to tier 4 eventually. But yeah, very good. Once again, consuming corpses. You're doing this along with your other consuming corpse skills is to help buff you up. Then I added Fast Blood aspect. Fast Blood aspect, you know, utilize blood orbs. Blood orbs reduce your ultimate cooldown by a certain amount of seconds. Once again, this is gonna be a good thing to get your blood orbs. You're gonna be collecting blood orbs anyway. You got, you know, the other ability to essentially spawn blood orbs. So you're essentially, you know, gonna be able to use your ultimate even more often, more periodically to do more damage like you want and keep yourself alive. So you're not only you're reducing your cooldown, you keep yourself alive, you know, helping your damage reduction, as well as increasing your damage output. And the final aspect I decided to put on this build is aspect of ultimate shadow. So this is a very cool one that also applies to not only Bone Storm, but Blood Wave as well. So you can have either one of these ultimates. It helps out both of them. But we have Bone Storm on this one. And what it does is it essentially makes them and turns them into darkness skills. Deal shadow damage and gain additional effects. So for the Bone Storm, your enemies damaged by Bone Storm take, you know, additional certain amount of damage over 2 seconds. Blood Wave, similar thing, you know, just up to you. Obviously, the better legendary version of this you have, the better and more damage it's going to do. Very good to have in this build. I've been using it, and this increases your ultimate skill. So not only are you having faster cooldown with the other aspect for your ultimate skill, and you got other things boosting up your damage, buffing your damage output overall with different skills, this is even buffing it even more to where you can just melt these enemies even more and just dominate. Like, it's so freaking fun to use. I can't stress it enough. Like, this is so good. Now to the gems. I don't use a ton of gem variation on here. It's only 3 gem types I use. I use the Sapphire gem to add damage reduction while fortified, and then I decided to put the topaz on my armor as well. I use about 4 of those. Yeah, 4 altogether, which basically adds to damage reduction while control impaired. Necros seem to not really have any abilities to kind of keep them from being controlled impaired, so this is really good to add some survivability. So 4 of those, 1 sapphire. And then I decided to add a bunch of diamonds as well too. I think I got 1 diamond on my weapon to increase the ultimate skill damage. And then actually no, I got 2 on my weapons. I have the one-handed scythe. I forgot to mention here. So I have a one-handed scythe and I got a shield. One-handed scythe, I got a diamond on there to increase ultimate skill damage. And not only that, the one-handed scythe has better attack speed than the two-handed scythe. So I decided to do that, but also keep the theme of the Reaper build. I decided to have the shield, have diamond as well, to add barrier generation for percent plus on barrier generation. Plus the shield in here is really good. I decided to get one that has more thorns overall, where your thorns can help you create corpses, because when enemies do direct damage to you, they're just going to get hit by the thorns and just get freaking melted away. I keep stressing the word melt because that's what you kind of do with this build. You just melt these enemies. And then I use 2 diamonds on the jewelry here to add resistance to all elements, buff that a bit. And last one is a skull. The skull just adds to the armor. This gives you some more armor there. If you don't necessarily want to do that, you don't have to. I decided to do that. You can always swap out to the diamonds for more elemental protection, but I decided to just add some more armor to this with the skull. And yeah, that does it for the equipment, legendary aspects, and the gems. For the Paragon board here, I didn't change anything up really. Just kept it the same mostly as the other Reaper build, just because I've yet to like unlock more glyphs and upgrade certain ones. So I go into, the rare node prime for more damage, basically. I have Slayer still in here and knowledge for more damage there. Let that alone, basically. I may have added like a few more around here, around wisdom, just to give more damage there for intelligence, because it goes off intelligence, basically. This is the flesh eater board here for the second one, so kept that the same pretty much. For the time being, like I said, just haven't had much time to essentially like upgrade or unlock more of the glyphs I really want to add in here, but this will still work for now, be serviceable for this build, and help you do a great amount of damage on this, so don't worry about that. So I hope this build was very helpful to you, with me going over the skill tree, the equipment, and the gems and everything like that I put into the equipment, and just some of those things you want to focus on with this build, as far as like, if you want to focus on the core abilities, some vulnerable damage, things like that, lucky hit chance, always very important in every build in my opinion. Hopefully it's very helpful in this. I got more builds I'm gonna be working on here. Just give me time, bear with me. And hopefully you enjoyed this. Let me know what builds you guys are running to. And if you really enjoyed this, please drop a like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. Thank you for watching.